Okay, we're going to do another itemization video today. Hopefully this one's a little bit shorter than the Titanic Hydra one I did last time. We're going to cover a slightly smaller set of items this time, and there'll also be timestamps in the description in case you'd like to skip around to some of the specific points mentioned that come up in this video. Today's item in question is the Black Cleaver. Takes position as a teamfight utility item in Irelia's build, primarily through the Armour Shred, and also giving nice set of stats which synergize with the Titanic Hydra build. So as we said, the main attractions for building Cleaver are the 20% CDR. We have the Armour Shred passive, and that it gives a sizable chunk of stats. As we see, it says it's 100% gold efficient without the passives. That said, obviously we're not making use of the phage passive, and I don't like to put a value on CDR or health for that matter, because you have to consider, for example, lifesteal or healing also is potentially health, so it kind of gets a little bit blurry there, but overall we get the general impression it is quite a gold efficient item. At cost of 3000 gold, it's middle of the road in terms of cost. It's not very expensive like stuff like Triforce and Infinity Edge or BT, but it's not particularly cheap like, for example, Locket or Sterix would be. In terms of the stats we obviously get the attack damage, the health, which synergizes, as I said, with the Titanic Hydra. Obviously the two passives of Titanic, the passive and the active, scale with the health, which is nice to have. And then the cooldown reduction is also nice in team fighting scenarios on Irelia, because you want to spend the minimum amount of time without your Q, and it generally frees you up a little bit more in terms of when you can use your Q in a team fight. And then lastly, of course, the Armour Shred. Irelia stacks Cleaver very quickly, especially when with Titanic. If we take as an example just a basic combo of Q auto with an alt, RQ auto basically, we already have 3 stacks basically instantaneously in quite a large area of effect because of the Titanic Hydra. Now, when we consider full combos, it's very easy for Irelia to get the full 6 stacks of Cleaver on a sizable chunk of the enemy team. Obviously, getting multiple auto attacks with Hydra and of course her alt casts. And this is generally one of the reasons it falls so well into the Titanic Hydra build, and potentially Ravenous Hydra as well, is because of that area of effect makes it very easy for Irelia to proc a lot of Cleaver stacks, and of course a Q auto allows it to stack twice extremely quickly. Reasons you'd like to get it for team fights is obviously nice for your AD carry. You're cutting through a lot of the team's armor, which helps your AD carry, and really a lot of team fighting is around protecting and enabling your AD carry to do a lot of damage. The other synergy with the Titanic Hydra build is you can go Titanic Cleaver and Locket after Triforce, which is a very generic 4-item build, which gives you, particularly if you're going Tabby, it gives you a sizable chunk of magic resist, it gives you a lot of survivability, you get 850 health from just Titanic and Cleaver, and then you get the 400 to 650 shield from Locket, which we mentioned in the other video. So overall it's quite a nice item for team fighting. Now, when it comes to Cleaver, obviously one of the things we have to consider is the build order, because for Phage we're not getting use of the passive movement speed that we get. So generally your build order will be something like Longsword, Ruby Crystal, and then Kindle Gem instead of completing Phage. Obviously there are slot efficiency considerations to take into account. I personally usually just go for Kindle Gem if I don't have 2 slots available, because the CDR is quite nice to have. Um, the other consideration with with Cleaver is we have to look at the rest of our team. It's obviously we lose a lot of value of Cleaver if we have 4 or 5 people on the team building it. It doesn't really make sense because then it's going to be the Armour Shred. It caps out at 5. Sorry, at 6 stacks, and doesn't matter how many cleavers we have on the team, it's not going to get past 6 stacks. So at some point you're losing value because you're not getting extra Armour Shred from multiple cleavers. So generally, one of the times you'd like to get Cleaver is when your AD carry isn't building it. So sometimes when you have, for example, Lucian, it might not be the best item to build. But for helping AD carries such as Ashe, such as Caitlyn, for example, it would be quite a good item to get. Other champions that might use Cleaver are, for example, Vi or Lee Sin or Kha'Zix, and you have to look at these sort of individually. Do they have to get Cleaver? In the case of Vi and Lee Sin, I'd say no, not really. Lee Sin doesn't use the CDR that well, and he doesn't stack Cleaver very fast without a Hydra item. And Irelia generally synergizes better with the Hydra items too. And Vi has the alternative of Triforce, and I think she also falls somewhat behind Irelia in terms of stacking Cleaver very quickly. Other champions such as Zed, Kha'Zix I mentioned, potentially you can go for 2 cleavers on the team because these champions do like buying Cleaver a lot and don't lose a lot of value. Well, they get a lot of the value of Cleaver out of the other stats it gives anyway. So, but it is something to consider regardless. In terms of items that are similar to Cleaver, it's mostly, I feel, the CDR items. So first there would be Frozen Heart. One of the things I don't really like about Frozen Heart is it's generally surpassed by Randuin's if we're looking for the attack speed slow, because Randuin's gives the HP, synergizes back with the Titanic. Frozen Heart, you'd usually like to buy it as a second item, but this cuts into our burst a lot. If we're going Titanic Hydra, it's obviously we get a lot of additional snowballing potential through around the 20-minute mark. Going Frozen Heart obviously cuts that because Frozen Heart isn't the cheapest item at 2.7k. And I generally feel like building armor on Irelia is somewhat marginal because in general you're gunning to kill the AD carry, not to kill a mage or something like that. So generally better to build magic resist and kill the AD carry. Other potential items is obviously Abyssal. I feel Abyssal is probably one of the items that's most similar to Cleaver because of the aura, increasing magic damage. Instead of Cleaver helping the physical damage dealers, Abyssal helps magic damage dealers. So maybe if you had a mage mid and something like Quagmore and a mage jungle as well, so then you'd look to get Abyssal maybe because so much of your team does magic damage, so it helps to buff up their damage a little bit. It obviously gives a sizable chunk of magic resist as well and some survivability. Adaptive Helm I feel is a very situational item. It's either good or it's not good, mainly based around the passive. Stat wise it's obviously inferior to Abyssal. And then lastly Spirit Visage. I think Spirit Visage is a bit overrated on Irelia. The increase in healing is not that significant. If you really want to go healing, you just build Bloodthirster. Gives you similar survivability. Maybe not the magic resist, but it gives you a lot of healing out of a single item, and really I think it gives a lot more healing than Spirit Visage. And then also I feel like when you look at Adaptive and Spirit Visage, I think they're outclassed by Locket because of the fact that Locket allows us to shield our teammates as well. And then lastly, of course, Maw, which we covered in the last video, because it's only a magic damage shield, I feel like it's very much outclassed. The last option is obviously Mortal Reminder. If as we said earlier, there's another champion building Cleaver on our team. Mortal Reminder is a very good option, especially again with the Titanic build, because we can get our grievous wounds applied on a large area of effect quite easily, and we get the Armour Shred as well when we're trying to avoid stacking Cleaver. But obviously the disadvantage here is that we're not getting any cooldown reduction. And yeah, I think that pretty much covers it for this item. As I said, timestamps are in the description. Kind of useless to mention that now, but yeah, feel free to check out some of the other itemization videos we've done. They're all in the Irelia main subreddit. Check out the subreddit, you can discuss them there, or a Discord server. All of that's linked in the description. And yeah, like, subscribe, share, you know what, and see you in the next one.